In a small village, where the grass was very green and the sun always felt like a warm hug, there lived a very wealthy man who had more cows and goats than anyone else in the land. This man was known for his big heart and his love for wisdom. So one bright afternoon, he sent his servants to ring a heavy iron bell to call all the villagers to sit under the shade of the giant ancient baobab tree. Everyone came running with big smiles, because they knew the wealthy man always had something special to share. And soon, the air was filled with the sound of children laughing and elders talking, while the birds chirped loudly in the branches above. The wealthy man stood up slowly and looked at the crowd with a mysterious twinkle in his eyes, while he pointed toward a small table covered with a beautiful cloth. On top of that table sat two very different boxes that made everyone stop talking and lean forward, because they were curious to see what was about to happen next. The first box was so bright and shiny that it looked like a piece of the sun had fallen from the sky, covered in shimmering gold and tiny sparkling stones that made the villagers gasp in wonder. Right next to it sat a very old and plain wooden box that looked quite dusty and lonely. But the wealthy man just smiled and told the people that today would be a day they would never forget as long as they lived. As the villagers continued to whisper among themselves, a tall and very proud man named Tunde stepped forward from the crowd, with a wide and confident smile stretching across his face. Tunde was the kind of person who always wanted the biggest yams and the finest clothes. So when he looked at the two boxes sitting on the table, he did not even glance at the dusty wooden one for a single second. He walked straight toward the box that was covered in shimmering gold and sparkling stones, reaching out his hands to touch the cool and shiny metal, while his heart beat fast with the thought of all the riches he believed were hidden inside. He turned to the wealthy man and the rest of the villagers, declaring in a loud and booming voice that only a king or a very important person should own such a beautiful treasure, and that surely this box held enough jewels to make him the richest man in the whole world. Everyone watched in total silence as Tunde lifted the heavy golden box with a look of great victory, holding it high above his head so that the bright afternoon sun could bounce off the gold and make it shine even more. He felt very lucky and important, because he believed that the most beautiful things on the outside must always be the most valuable on the inside, and he began to walk away with a proud strut, thinking about how his neighbors would soon be very jealous of his great fortune. With Tunde gone and the golden box no longer on the table, the wealthy man turned his gaze toward a quiet and gentle young man named Chidi, who had been standing patiently at the back of the crowd without saying a single word. Chidi walked forward slowly with a respectful bow, and even though the only thing left for him was the plain and dusty wooden box, he did not look sad or disappointed at all. He reached out and picked up the weathered box with great care, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath his fingers and noticing how heavy and solid it felt in his hands, despite its simple and lonely appearance. The villagers began to giggle and point their fingers at Chidi, whispering to one another that he was a very foolish man for being so happy with a box that looked like it belonged in a kitchen fire or a dusty corner of a barn. Some of the people even laughed out loud and told him that while Tunde would be sleeping on a bed of jewels, Chidi would only have a box of old wood to keep him company during the cold nights. Chidi did not mind the laughter or the mean words at all, because he looked into the eyes of the wealthy man and saw a kind smile that told him there was more to life than things that glittered under the sun. He thanked the wealthy man with a sincere heart and began his long walk home, carrying his humble wooden box through the green fields, while the birds continued to sing as if they knew a secret that the laughing villagers had completely missed. When Tunde finally reached his house, he slammed his heavy wooden door shut and called out to his wife and children in a voice that was shaking with pure excitement and greedy joy. He placed the shimmering golden box in the very center of his large table and told his family to gather around closely because they were about to become the most important people in the entire village. With hands that were trembling and a heart that was pounding like a drum against his chest, he slowly unhooked the tiny golden latch and pulled the lid wide open, expecting to see a mountain of bright diamonds and heavy red rubies that would make his eyes ache from their beauty. However, instead of a bright flash of light or the sound of clinking jewels, a small cloud of grey dust puffed out into the air and made Tunde cough as he stared down in total disbelief at what was truly inside. His face turned very pale, and his mouth hung open as he looked at a handful of dry, brown sand that was mixed with old, sticky spider webs that clung to the sides of the box like ghostly fingers. There were no jewels, no gold coins, and no precious stones at all, but only the cold and silent remains of a box that had been empty of life for a very long time. Tunde felt a cold shiver run down his spine as he realized that the beautiful gold on the outside was nothing more than a thin layer of paint meant to hide the useless dirt within, and he slumped into his chair, feeling very small and foolish, while his family looked at him with eyes full of sadness and deep disappointment. While Tunde was sitting in his quiet house, feeling very sad, Chidi arrived at his own small home and sat down with his family under the cool shade of a mango tree to see what was hidden inside his plain wooden box. He did not rush or pull at the lid with greed, but instead he opened it slowly and carefully, and immediately a wonderful and sweet smell filled the air that made everyone feel happy and peaceful inside their hearts. Inside the dusty wooden box, there were no piles of gold or shiny rocks, but instead it was filled to the brim with very rare and magical seeds that were known to grow the strongest crops and the most delicious fruit in all of Africa. Chidi realized that while gold can be stolen or lost, these seeds were a treasure that would grow and feed his family and his neighbors for many years, making sure that no child in the village would ever go hungry again. He ran his fingers through the cool, healthy seeds and found a small piece of paper at the bottom that had beautiful writing on it, explaining that the wooden box was like a good person whose true beauty is found in the help they give to others rather than how they look on the outside. His wife and children began to dance and sing with great joy because they understood that they had received a gift of life and growth, which was worth much more than a box full of cold and heavy stones that could not be eaten or planted in the ground. As the sun began to set and painted the sky with beautiful stripes of orange and purple, Tunde walked slowly toward Chidi's house with his head hanging low and the empty golden box tucked under his arm like a heavy burden. He found Chidi and his family busy planting the magical seeds in the dark, rich soil of their garden. And when Tunde saw how happy and hopeful they were, he finally understood the big mistake he had made by only looking at the surface of things. He stood before his friend and confessed that his heart had been blinded by the glitter of the gold, admitting that he had been very foolish to choose a box just because it looked expensive, while ignoring the simple wooden one that held the true blessing. Chidi looked up from the ground with a warm and forgiving smile, and instead of boasting about his good luck, he reached into his bag and shared a handful of his precious seeds with Tunde so that his family could also have a garden full of food. The two men walked back to the center of the village to tell the story to everyone they met, teaching the children and the elders alike that a person's worth is like a box that must be opened to see what is truly hidden in the heart. From that day on, the villagers never again judged a person by their clothes or a gift by its wrapping, and they always remembered the tale of the golden box as a reminder that the most valuable treasures in life are the ones that bring kindness and growth to everyone around them.